Hey guys, welcome to the Reparenting Daily podcast, your daily guide for inner child healing. This podcast helps you establish a consistent reparenting routine, and this is divided into 3 sections. The first is a daily reading, the second is a discussion of the reading, followed by suggested journal prompts, and the last section is a peaceful meditation for closing. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from whenever and wherever you're joining us. I'm so glad that you're here to continue on this journey of self-expansion and growth. If this is your first time here, welcome. Now, before we dive in, I'd like to congratulate everyone on our 500th episode of Reparenting Daily. That's correct, 500 days, back-to-back, every day, of episodes for reparenting yourself, your inner child. Podcast that gives you support, encouragement, consistent place to go to establish your daily routine, because reparenting is about consistency. Working with the subconscious mind is all about consistent effort. And so I'd like to thank you all for being here with me on this journey so far. I really appreciate all of the support that I've had so far, and I look forward to continuing on this journey. Now, I'd like to take a few more announcements. If you're new here, or if you've been around, you might know that we have a Reparenting Daily journal, and that journal is structured along the year, and every month there's a theme, and every week is a sub-theme that corresponds to the monthly theme. This is the structure of the podcast that gives our reparenting program an overall direction and something to really build on. So you can go ahead and find that on Amazon. If you'd like to join us, you can find the link in the show notes or also on the website. I'd like to add also that we have a Patreon community. We had some issues with that over the summer. I've been quite sick, but I've now just got that up and running. And what I've decided to do now is to make my Zoom calls and the community free. So we have 3 weekly meetings that we have on Zoom calls to discuss different topics. So the first is book club meeting. The second meeting that we have on, this one is on Monday. The second one that we have is on Wednesday. And this is a open topic discussion. And then on Friday, we have a group meditation and discussions on other topics as they come up. And so since everyone is having a hard time these days, I decided to make that free, just to, share something with the people in the community, because I know that many people are struggling and can't afford extra expenses. So for this time, you can now join the Patreon for free. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can also choose a paid subscription, or you can also purchase the journal. I'd also like to announce that I've been reworking the Reparenting Fairy Tales for Reparenting series. This is a collection of a 3-volume series of fairy tales, so fairy tales for reparenting, and they're organized along the hero's journey. Basically, I've rewritten those in the springtime, and I found out that when I was doing some rewriting and also changing the graphics, that some of the content in the books have been a bit messed up. And so for now, they are still available on Amazon, but I have to do a lot of revision. Unfortunately, I've burned my eyes, guys, so I'm still out on sick leave from work, and so I'm very limited. I have some people helping me with the editing, but it takes a lot of work because we're about 3 different volumes of this collection, so it takes a lot of time. And so I will go ahead and give you a heads up once those are in good order again, but please don't order those on Amazon right now, because they're not ready, and they make it really difficult to pause something. You have to restart uploading a whole new product, and so that's why I cannot take them down now. Then I'd have to start the entire process again, which is really a headache. And so we're in that situation. But you know what it is, we got the products out. There are some tweaks to be made. It's a really great collection. It's a really fun way to look into reparenting, to reconnecting with your inner child, to look at these stories. You might think, oh, fairy tales are childish, but actually, if you look into the history of the Grimm's fairy tales, I mean, these things don't end positively. I mean, there are so many fairy tales with so many lessons, that really connect to our collective unconsciousness. Why are fairy tales important? I'm not the first one to raise this. This goes back to the work of Carl Jung and Marie-Louise von Franz, who understood the importance of the messages that fairy tales carry. And that's why this project has really been one of the most inspiring and fun and creative projects that I've ever worked on myself. And I'm really excited to get those done. Definitely will have that done by the end of the year. But it does take some extra work, so please do give me some time and understanding there. This first intro is a bit longer, and I'll be redoing that, but I just wanted to give a special introduction for our 500th episode, and just also to give you a bit of an update on everything else that's going on now that I'm making some changes, including making the Patreon communities and Zoom calls free, since we are now reaching that 500th episode, and people are really struggling and needing some help out there. So for now, that is all going to be free. You can check out the link to the Patreon on the website or on social media. There's a link tree there on the Instagram page. And yeah, thanks for being here. So without further ado, now let's dive into today's practice. Today's reading is Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. You can find the link in the show notes. Just as a reminder, it's September and the theme is Emotional Intelligence. We're in week 1, the last day of week 1, which is September 1st until the 7th. And the theme for this week is Understanding Emotional Intelligence. Today we're going to be reading Appendix B, Hallmarks of the Emotional Mind. Only in recent years has there emerged a scientific model of the emotional mind that explains how so much of what we do can be emotionally driven. How can we be so reasonable at one moment and so irrational the next? And the sense in which emotions have their own responses and their own logic. Perhaps the best two assessments of the emotional mind are offered independently by Paul Ekman, Seymour Epstein. By Paul Ekman, the head of the Human Interaction Laboratory at UC San Francisco, and by Seymour Epstein, a clinical psychologist at the University of Massachusetts. While Ekman and Epstein have each weighed a different scientific evidence, they offer a basic list of qualities that distinguish emotions from the rest of mental life. The emotional mind is far quicker than the rational mind, springing into action without pausing even a moment to consider what it's doing. Its quickness precludes the deliberate analytic reflection that is the hallmark of the thinking mind. In evolution, this quickness most likely revolved around the most basic decision, what to pay attention to, and one's vigilant while say confronting another animal, making split decisions like, do I eat this, or does it eat me? Those organisms had to pause too long to reflect on these answers and were unlikely to have many progeny to pass to their slow-acting genes. Action that springs from the emotional mind can carry a particularly strong sense of clarity, a byproduct of a streamlined, simplified way of looking at things that can be absolutely bewildering to the rational mind. Whether they're subtles or even in mid-response, when we find ourselves thinking, what did I do that for? A sign that the rational mind is awakening to the moment, but not with the rapidity of the emotional mind. Since the interval between what triggers an emotion and its eruption can be virtually instantaneous, the mechanisms that appraises perception must be capable of great speed, even in brain time, which is reckoned in thousandths of a second. This appraisal of the need to act needs to be automatic, so rapid that it never enters conscious awareness. This quick and dirty variety of emotional responses sweeps over us virtually before we quite know what is happening. This rapid mode of perception sacrifices accuracy for speed, relying on first impressions, reacting to the overall picture or the most striking aspects. It takes things at once, as a whole, reacting without taking the time for thoughtful analysis. Vivid elements can determine that impressions outweighing a careful evaluation of the details. The great advantage is that the emotional mind can read an emotional reality. He's angry with me. She's lying. This is making him sad. In an instant, making an intuitive snap judgment that tells us who to be wary of, who to trust, who's in distress. The emotional mind is our radar of danger. If we, or fair forebears in evolution, waited for the rational mind to make some of these judgments, we might only be wrong, we might be dead. The drawback is that these impressions and intuitive judgments, because they are made in the snap of a finger, may be mistaken or misguided. Paul Ekman proposes that this quickness, in which emotion can take us over before we are quite aware they have started, is essential to their being so highly adaptive. They mobilize us to respond to urgent events without wasting time pondering whether to react or how to respond. Using the system he developed for detecting emotions from subtle changes in facial expression, Ekman can track micro emotions that fit across the face in less than half a second. Ekman and his collaborators have discovered that emotional expressions begin to show up in changes in facial musculature within a thousandth of a second after the triggering events, and that the physiological changes typical of a given emotion, like shedding blood flow or increasing heart rate, also take only a fraction of a second to begin. This swiftness is particularly true of intense emotion like fear of a sudden threat. Ekman argues that, technically speaking, the full heat of emotion is very brief, lasting just seconds rather than minutes, hours, or days. His reasoning is that it would be maladaptive for an emotion to capture the brain and body for a long time, regardless of changing circumstances. If the emotion caused by a single event irreversibly continued to dominate us after it had passed, and regardless of what else happening around us, then our feelings would be a poor guides to action. For emotions to last longer, the trigger must be sustained, in effect continually evoking the emotion, as when the loss of a loved one keeps us mourning. When feeling persists for hours, it is usually a muted form. Moods set an affective tone, but they are not such strong shapers of how we perceive and act as is the high heat of full emotion. Thank you, and that's the reading for today. Today's reading on the emotional mind speaks directly to our September theme of emotional intelligence by showing why emotions feel so overwhelming and why they can override rational thought. The emotional mind is lightning fast, making snap judgments before the rational mind has a chance to catch up. Evolutionary, this speed kept us alive, detecting danger, sensing threat, or recognizing distress in others. But in modern life, the same quick but sloppy response can lead us to misjudge situations, act impulsively, or regret words spoken in the heat of the moment. Emotional intelligence begins with recognizing this difference between our fast emotional reactions and slower rational processing. For this week's theme of understanding emotional intelligence, this reading reminds us that emotions have their own logic and their own way of perceiving the world. Emotional intelligence is not about suppressing these instinctive responses, but learning to notice them without being consumed by them. By becoming aware of how quickly our emotional mind jumps in, we can practice slowing down, checking our assumptions, and giving the rational mind a chance to join the conversation. This balance is the foundation of reparenting, choosing not to let old survival patterns or childhood fears dictate our present, but instead creating space for clarity, compassion, and wiser choices. As we move on to the journal prompts today, number 1, when was the last time I reacted emotionally before thinking, and what might have changed if I had paused before responding? Number 2, what snap judgments does my emotional mind often make about other people or situations, and how accurate are they, really? And number 3, how can I practice giving my rational mind more space before acting on an emotional impulse? That's it for today, as always. Thanks for being here. Take care of yourself, and please do be well. Welcome back. Now, this is the third and final section of the daily podcast. This is your silent meditation. Please go ahead and find a space where you can be comfortable and undisturbed, where you can relax and spend some time with yourself for this 10-minute silent meditation. You can choose to be sitting, standing, lying down, or in whatever position makes you comfortable today. Take a moment to simply be with yourself. Focus on your breath and gently connect with each part of your body. If thoughts arise, don't let them overwhelm you. Just observe them without attachment. Imagine them as leaves drifting down atop a river, passing by without needing your engagement. Stay present, grounded, and open to this moment, no matter what time you are listening and practicing this meditation. Namaste.